What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Watch It in Action. I'm BouseFeenux. Wait, do I really have to say this? I'm BouseFeenux, and I use A1 laxatives and suppositories for a healthy stool. Thank you for choosing A1 laxatives.
I've delivered a life.
Cut.
You know, when I wanted sponsors for my channel, this really isn't what I had in mind. Anyway, welcome back to Watch It in Action, and today, at long last, we're finally going to be covering the Synoid Simulor. This is probably the most requested weapon from you guys, and I'm glad I could finally get around to it. The Synoid Simulor is a very unique weapon in Warframe, and can be purchased from Cephalon Suda at a max reputation for 125,000 standing, and can be used upon reaching Master Rank 12. If you don't have Cephalon Suda, you can trade with another player for this weapon, but remember, you still have to be Master Rank 12 to use it. The Synoid Simulor is a strange weapon that fires energy orbs which deal innate magnetic damage and no other damage types if unmodded. When two or more of these orbs combine, they'll trigger an explosion in a radius of 11 meters. This is the highest base radius of any explosive in the game. Also, combining the orbs forms a larger orb that will float in place and deal a small amount of damage to anything passing by. Furthermore, you can continue to add to this orb, creating a mega orb, or you can detonate it with the alt fire button, which will generate an electric proc in a smaller radius around the point of detonation. Since electric procs stun enemies, this opens up some pretty fantastic crowd control opportunities. Now, as an added bonus, the Synoid Simulor features the Entropy Syndicate proc, which, when triggered by gaining enough affinity, will explode outwards, dealing 1,000 magnetic damage, as well as restoring 25% of the player's base energy, and increasing your energy for 25% for 30 seconds. This weapon is unique in a lot of ways, and the mod setup for this weapon is no exception. Let's take a look at the build real quick. Alright guys, and welcome back to the mod screen here. I want to show you guys real quick the amount of forma we have invested in this weapon. It's only 3, and that's because a lot of these Syndicate weapons actually come with polarities already, which is really nice. They come with a couple out of the box, and that's going to give you a chance to actually try the weapon out, try a couple different lower level builds on it, just to see if you like how the weapon works. And I really like that. This should definitely be a goal for you to get to Master Rank 12 and get these weapons as quickly as you possibly can. So, 3 forma invested in this thing, and we can fit this build, which you will see here in a second in the simulacrum, is very, very effective. So, we have some things on here that shouldn't work, but really do. It's a very strange weapon, and we'll go over this. So, Heavy Caliber is the first mod on here. It's going to give us an increase to damage at a cost of accuracy. Now, the Synoid Simulor has perfect accuracy, so Heavy Caliber isn't going to affect it. So really, we're just getting an extra 165% damage. No-brainer with this mod. Serration, very easy. We use this on literally every weapon, every rifle weapon we're going to build. We never don't have this. Now, my element here, I'm using Viral and Magnetic. Magnetic is actually innate on the weapon, so you're already going to have this no matter what you do. We actually shouldn't be able to have Viral because they both require Cold. If I put Cold on here and this was just a regular weapon that didn't have Magnetic on it, it would just go straight into the Magnetic or straight into the Viral, whichever one was first. But since that's an innate element, we actually get 2 different elements here. We'll never be able to change this Magnetic. It'll always be on there, which kind of sucks because on different enemies, this Magnetic isn't going to be effective at all. But the weapon does so much damage that that really doesn't matter. So you can use any elemental combination you want. You can use Corrosive, Blast, Heat, whatever. There's a bunch of different things you can use, but this is the elemental choice that I've chosen to go with because I was fighting Corpus last, so this is really good for Corpus. Now, the Vial Acceleration, some of you might be kind of about, but I really think it's important for this weapon. You're not going to notice the negative 15% damage because the Vial Acceleration increases our fire rate, which for this weapon increases our DPS. That's very important. We want to be able to fire and combine those orbs as quickly as possible. So Vial Acceleration, I feel like, is pretty necessary for this build. If you really don't want to do the negative 15% damage, if you're really trying to min-max, what you can do is you can put on a Speed Trigger, and that'll be okay, but it won't be nearly as good as a Vial Acceleration, and you will notice the difference, trust me. Now, for these mods here, these crit mods, these shouldn't work because this weapon only has a 25% critical chance with a max rank point strike. That shouldn't work, but it really does. The weapon is an explosive weapon, which means that, kind of like the Tonkor when you're using Argon Scope, if you get an explosion near an enemy, it pretty much counts as a headshot. And when we get crits, they're always pretty much going to count as headshot crits, which is really nice. And for some reason, this weapon crits all the time. It crits very reliably with even just a 25% critical chance. It's very strange, I know, but bear with me here. So, Critical multiplier is going to be increased by this Vital Sense here. We definitely need that if we're running Point Strike and we're trying to go crit. And then I'm using Bladed Rounds. I was using Hammer Shot for this, but then Bladed Rounds came out, and it's pretty much double what Hammer Shot can do. It's 120% crit damage while aiming for 9 seconds. Very interesting there. So I'm definitely going to be using Bladed Rounds on this. If you don't have a Bladed Rounds, you can definitely use Hammer Shot. That works as well. Either way, it doesn't matter. So... and you only have to get a kill to trigger this, which is going to be very easy because this thing does a ton of damage. It hits like a truck. So that's pretty much the build, guys. Now, some of you might be wondering, why not use Split Chamber? Well, it's as I said before, the weapon has perfect accuracy, and we get most of our damage not from the damage over time that this per stack thing says, which is how the weapon deals its damage. This isn't per tick, this is over time as the orb is alive, and I'm pretty sure that's correct. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but as the orb sits there, it has the potential to do about this much damage. Now, what Split Chamber does is it combines the orbs before or right when they're fired, which isn't going to help our damage at all. We don't get much damage from the damage per second or the explosion that's triggered whenever we blow up an orb. Now, we don't want Split Chamber because the weapon has perfect accuracy. It'll combine those orbs together, and it'll make this weapon not nearly as effective as it could be. And you're wondering, well, why does this weapon work so well with Mirage? It works really well with Mirage because Mirage fires from a couple different angles. Her clones fire weapons. So it's not like the bullet is coming, or the projectile is coming from the same barrel. It's actually coming from two different enemies, or two different, clones or whatever. It's coming from two different directions, and then they combine. They're not combined as soon as they're shot, which kills our damage. So that's why Mirage works so well with this weapon. In all honesty, I feel like this weapon was made for Mirage, but we're going to see that here in a second. Let's go over to the Simulacrum, and I'll show you how crazy this build works. It shouldn't work at all, but it really does. Let's check it out in the Simulacrum. So for today's exercise, we're going to be using a mix of high-level Corpus enemies. I've thrown in some Corpus techs, which are like the bombards of the Corpus units. If you ever spent any time on Triton and gotten to a high chaotic count, you know how tough these guys can be. They have a lot of health. So jumping right in, and you notice right away we completely destroyed that first wave of enemies. You can see that although we aren't getting criticals all the time, they're still fairly reliable and do massive amounts of damage. Even without the criticals, you can see that the non-crit damage is still in the 6 to 9k range per orb combo, which is really nice considering how fast this weapon fires. Now, I know this weapon does seem amazing, but it does have its shortcomings. For one, the orbs have to combine to get that explosive damage, and this can be tricky if you're in a high pressure situation and running around a lot. Also, the weapon has a short travel distance, which is pretty much its biggest downside. You have to get really close in order to use this, and that can make it really difficult to use against enemies that are far away. But if you can stay close and aim for head level, you should be able to take out groups of enemies with ease, as you saw here. Alright guys, that pretty much does it for this video, though. Thank you so much for watching. I know the Synoid Simulor is a little bit more of a complicated weapon than what we've covered in the past. Very detailed, it's got a lot of different mechanics, and the way the firing works is kind of complicated and hard for newer players to understand, and even more advanced players. So, hopefully I didn't leave anything out. I think I pretty much covered everything. If you guys have questions, don't forget to leave those down below, and I'll get to those as quickly as I can. But again, this has been another episode of Watch It in Action. I'm BouseFeenux. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one.